right, so today we have Mr. Jarrett Morgan with us, man. Welcome to the show,
Thank
man.
you, thank you.
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
yeah.
I know we talked about this for a while, so
We
I'm glad we
have,
finally made it happen.
we have, yeah.
Yeah.
So Jarrett's a Steadicam operator based here in Atlanta. He's been involved with projects like Baron Jenkins, the Underground Railroad, the show Atlanta, and many more. So I guess just to kind of get us rolling here, Jarrett, why don't you tell us a little more about kind of what got you into the business and how you became a camera operator?
Sure. I grew up around Atlanta. My mom's a preacher. I grew up in a church, like a 3,000 member, relatively big church in like suburban Atlanta that had a like 3-camera live show every Sunday. So they record it for like the people that couldn't come to church, and we projected on big screens. And so, it was a church, so we didn't have like super nice stuff, but those DVX 100Bs, those things got us through.
Nice.
I'm sure everyone remember those. And so since I was like 10, I've been operating like live cameras in a church, doing that stuff, and obviously very, very different than operating on set. But by the time I was in high school, I was, spending a ton of time there and got super involved in the multimedia stuff and thought that I wanted to make corporate videos for a living, basically. And so I didn't really know how you did that in college, but I still wanted to go to college. I did well in school, so I went to Georgia Tech because it was sort of the best school I could get into in Georgia, with the Hope Scholarship and whatnot.
Sure, yeah.
And met some folks that still work in the film industry in Atlanta my freshman year. Michael Kim, who's a DIT, who's an excellent DIT.
Awesome.
Siddharth Kantamani, who's another excellent operator, photographer, director of photography, director. He's one of my best friends, but also very, very, very talented man. Max Chinkara, Zach Chinkara, all those guys I met when I was in college, and a bunch of them brought me onto various student films and other things, and sort of, hey, come out in second for me on this student film that's not gonna be any money, but you're gonna spend all weekend doing it and learn a bunch. And
it's not gonna make any money, but it's also gonna take all of your time.
Right, exactly. It's sort of the double whammy there. But I learned a bunch, and I sort of realized that I could work in movies. Like it was sort of a thing, like not growing up around it. Neither parents are none of my family's in the film industry at all, and so it's sort of a thing of not even sort of realizing that it exists. Obviously the things get made, but like not understanding the machine behind it.
100%, yeah.
And so sort of getting a taste of that machine, and set life is addictive. Like the adrenaline and the sort of the feeling of accomplishment of set and stuff. And so he's not in the film industry anymore, I don't think, but Chris Campbell was, I met him very early on when he was transitioning from being a grip to a Steadicam operator. And I remember I did a music video for, I think it was Old Man Cabbage was the song.
Okay.
I'm
not familiar, believe it or not.
No, I'm trying to remember the name. Is Lovett, Ben Lovett, Bob Lovett, who's an electrician in town. His brother is a musician.
Oh, really? Okay, I know Bob.
Yeah,
I got to work with Bob, actually.
Such a good musician. I did a couple of music videos early on, and it was really big in the Atlanta film scene in that like early 2010s.
Very cool.
And I saw Chris Campbell doing Steadicam, and it was the first time I've ever seen it, and I was like, that's cool. Like that is so cool.
You have a growth on your side there. What is this?
But as someone who growing in high school, my favorite subject was physics. I took 2 years of AP Physics. I love the mechanics of things. The reason I sort of got into all this stuff in the first place is the gear, the mechanics. How does this work together?
You're kind of a gearhead, kind of.
Totally,
right?
I'm totally a tinkerer, and always been a tinkerer. And so seeing that thing and being like, oh, it's all just physics. There's no of course now we have waves and volts, but at the time, there's no electronics. It's just physics. It's just a slightly bottom-heavy pendulum with some springs and some bearings, and that's all it is. And then to make that into this like unit of freedom that you can move a camera anywhere was just a dream. So
yeah, sure.
So I was like, I'm going to do that. At the time, I was working as an electrician in a grip, and I did a show as a sound utility. I did a show as a dolly grip. I ended up, did a little bit of everything when I was like 19, 20. It was right when the film industry blew up here, and there was just like, oh, you're young and smart and will work hard. Come do this thing. I don't care. You don't know what you're doing. So, it was an amazing opportunity that I don't think it really exists here anymore because there's enough people here now. But at the time, I was able to do a show as a sound utility with zero experience and learn enough now that I can communicate really well with sound people. It's like I understand how important that is, and I can I can understand what you mean when you say you want to plant there and how we need to hide it and what the directionality of that thing is, or like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of all these things that I wouldn't have been able to earlier. Same thing with the dolly grip,
Yeah, and if I could, 'cause I want to
yeah,
hear
absolutely.
the rest about it. I think it's so interesting, and I kind of had planned this question for you because I knew you had started your career in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I was one who moved to LA, and I began my career there very similarly. But what I always found interesting, and I think you kind of answered my question, was I felt like LA was at least at a time in my head, I thought it was an easier place to start because you had more like independent projects, you had a lot
Right.
more smaller stuff. So it was like if you were a second who was interested in polling, it's like, okay, there might lie an opportunity to
100%.
learn, to whatever. And so I was curious kind of how that worked for someone in a town like Atlanta, which did not have as many. I mean, there's certainly work going on of course, but it seemed like it was a smaller place than LA at the time.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good point. It was almost like the work flooded the amount of people that were here, which
100%.
opened opportunity for locals who were willing and ready. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, my first day as a unit electrician on set was on Anchorman 2.
Yeah.
Working for the amazing Stephen Crowley, one of the best gaffers out there.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember coming on set and just being like, I was like 20, I think, being so overwhelmed and being like, okay, that's a 20K. I've never seen one of those before. How is he turning it on? Okay, you have to turn the thing up and do it. Okay, I can go turn this one on now. Let me go do it. And just like this thing of just like, why did they hire me? Like, why would you, like, I didn't know what I was doing. But I was like relatively smart and hardworking. It was going to come and they're like, move that over there. I was like, yes, sir, I can do that, And so
I can listen to instructions.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point, that's what people want. But I don't think that exists as much anymore. I don't know. I'm a different place in my career. But talking to people that are here now, I know so many young Steadicam operators in town now, and a lot of them are very talented. And there is a lot more smaller work too. We have a bunch of work here through commercial houses and more indie features. Music videos, all that world, which was around a little bit when I started. I did a bunch of music videos. But I don't know if there's the same sort of the ability to do such vertical leaps and bounds, as there was. But I don't know, and I've had people ask me questions, and I'm like, it's such a specific thing where it's like I can tell you what I did, but I don't know if that's gonna apply to your situation at all.
And I think that's a good point, and it's one of the reasons why it's like most of the episodes of this podcast, we ask the same questions, like, how'd you get started? Because you can see none of our stories align perfectly. Right. So it's like there's so many ways, and it's more about it's the person who will find a way to get started is the one who will have a story to tell someday. So it's more about the attitude and the drive, and if it is actually what they want to do, that's going to motivate them to actually push forward. More than it is like to do what you did or do what I did. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's a hard thing to get started at. There's the barrier to entry is very high, both cost and time.
Yeah, sure.
And the punishment for failure is very high as well. It is a thing that I tell new operators to, like, don't take a job that you don't think you can do well, because it doesn't matter if you get called for a job and you screw it up. Those people will remember that, and that's not to say I haven't made mistakes. I still make lots of mistakes, and I still 100%. Learn, and all that sort of stuff. But it's, and when you do make a mistake, own up to it. I messed up. I won't have it again. I learned. But I also understand that it's a very privileged way that I was able to come into it. I understand that it is a part of that barrier to entry. I was very lucky that I dropped out of college without any debt. I had the Hope Scholarship, and I was able to live at home and go to school, and
that's great. Yeah,
not have to deal with that. And I was also that I was tinkery enough that I could make modifications and sort of build up my rig with stuff that was old and didn't work that well, but I was able to modify it to make how it works. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I want to get into that at some point. But I think to your point, it's and it's good that you look at how you got into it, and you have an attitude of being grateful versus whatever other options. But I think it's a testament to anyone. Again, it's about the attitude of the person and the willingness for them to find a way to get in. It's like it is it's a gate for everyone, and you just kind of have to find the hole or the key or the ladder. You just got to find a way in.
And the thing that I found that I think was amazing and lovely is that just about everyone I ever talked to in the film industry are wonderful. Yes. Like they want to they want to share knowledge, they want to have mentees, they want to share information, they like talking about the stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the way in. I know guys that have reached out. I reach out to them, or somebody's reached out to me recently, and I even just doing a little machining project for them or something, and then I'm like, I get called for something I can't do. I'm like, hey, well, there's this guy, he might be great for that. The little things like that where I guess going back to how I got started, I can trace almost every role that I have now to Alex Orr, which I'm sure a lot of people in Atlanta know Alex Orr's name.
I love Alex.
He produced a feature called Congratulations when I was 19, and I was the camera utility on it for like a week. It all shot, and Mike Bruni directed it. It was all in one house. I was running S-by-S cards up and down the stairs, to the downloader, and it was really fun. Chris Campbell shot it. It was a good time. But nice. I met him on that, and we stayed in contact and whatever. And when Atlanta season 1 came around, and he was producing, he knew I'd been operating, and he pitched me as an operator to the DP. And Christian Springer, who's fantastic. Yeah. And I look back now and I realize that I think he pitched me because I was local and cheap. I don't think he pitched me because and total respect for Orr, that he was like, I think this kid can do it.
Smart
but
man.
I didn't have the credentials at that point, and I know it was a cheap show and there was shows like that, but I didn't do the pilot. And so I think it was one of those things where hey, try this kid, see if he's good, and then if you don't like him, you can replace him, bring something in, whatever. And thankfully, it turned into a wonderful working relationship. Christian Springer is an incredible DP, a lovely human being, and Hiro Murai is an incredible director. But I look and I see the success of that show and see how that also sort of the street cred that gave me really allowed me to do other jobs.
Sure.
And I will say that Atlanta is a very simple camera show. It's a very powerful show, and it's very, very well done, but the camera work all serves the story, and there's nothing flashy. It's not I think the first season I may have put the rig on 10 times the whole season. Second season was more, and the third and fourth are now even more and more as it becomes a slightly more, as the show sort of grows in its stylistic choices. Right. But the whole show exists in limited coverage, long cuts, all those things that are not necessarily very camera heavy. So it's that thing of storytelling through the camera as opposed to technical skill. And that sort of brings me to the last chapter of this how I started thing, is that I got started with the gear and I was so gear heavy, and then at some point it kind of switched, and it had been switching for a while, and then I sort of started realizing that the thing I got more excited about was the storytelling, and the thing that perfect shots don't really matter, and making technical perfection is kind of only for all the other operators out there. The thing that matters more is the story. And so I had this conversation with a lot of people that sort of the hierarchy of movies, cinematography is 7th, 8th, maybe, it's the story is the thing that's the most important. And then you have the acting and directing. And then even above camera cinematography is production design and sound and costume design, all these things. If you have these things, the other stuff sort of falls into place a little bit better. Good cinematography can make a good story, good movie great. It can't take a bad thing and make it good. There's just no way. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. And so in this most recent chapter of my life and my career, which, the last 4 or 5 years or so, I've been really sort of doubling down on that concept, and had a great conversation with Jeff Haley when I was a day playing on Jumanji, talking about being a director's operator and I don't know if you've had him on here or not.
We have not yet, no.
But he is, again, one of those incredible operators. And it was really, really fascinating to talk to him and talk about how, and you should have him on, have him tell the story, this is now secondhand, and I've told it a bunch of times, but essentially talking about the fact that directing is an island. And everyone wants the movie to be good, but everyone's version of the movie being good is different. for costumes, the movie being good is good costumes, and for grips and electrics, the movie being good is good lighting, and and of the positions that are able to just be present in the story and present in the storytelling, it's sort of the director and the camera operator. Like as operators, we don't have to think about gear for tomorrow. We don't have to think about hiring for next week. We don't have to think about that interpersonal managerial relationship between those two people that are, fighting or were dating and now aren't dating or whatever the thing is.
Sure.
We're able to absorb ourselves in the script and absorb ourselves in the story and be able to work with the director and the DP to tell that story effectively. And so I find that that's sort of the place that I've really come to love being.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing that excites me now way more than using the fancy toys and using the cool gear or whatever is the story good? Is the movie going to be good? Are the actors going to be good? Is it going to be a viscerally rewarding experience for not just for me and the people on set, but for the viewer? So that's sort of the culminates sort of where I've come and where I've
that's great, and I think it kind of highlights this somewhat of a natural progression of, because it's like when you see a Steadicam for the first time, of course you're thinking about how fun would it be to move the camera wherever I want, constantly, and that over time turns into, okay, that's not helpful usually. So how can I use a tool to what is the application of this tool to help tell this story?
Absolutely.
I think that's a natural thing, and it speaks to maybe our younger or rather newer filmmakers of how there are things that I talked about this with Chris McGuire recently, and he was saying when I first saw that job, I didn't see the complexity of the job, of course, because you're not there. You don't see the he was saying like the paranoia of like, is this the headroom that they actually like, or like, am I doing a good job as an operator? It's just like these are normal things in our jobs, and you when you're first looking at that, you see how fun this could be, and so I think it's a natural progression, and I mean, that being said, what do you think for newer filmmakers that see this position of an operator, or see someone like Chris Campbell, wielding this Steadicam, how cool it is? What do you think the challenges are for those filmmakers getting into the role of a camera operator?
The challenges of the role. Well, I think So I think first of all, especially on smaller productions, it's the question of, okay, does an operator bring any value to this production? And I know DPs that shoot small budget things or something like that, they're like, I don't want an operator. Because if the operators they're working for aren't good, they don't bring a value to the production. And that's a hard thing, because in order to be good, at some point you have to be not good. I was really not good when I started. Like, really, we all were. That's how it works. So I think that's part of why, and props off to you for not doing Steadicam. I think that's why Steadicam is has been traditionally in the last 10, 15 years or so an easy way to become an operator, because it's a thing that most DPs can't do. And so it's not a thing that you can be like, well, if I want Steadicam, I have to hire a Steadicam operator, right? And
well, I'm doing it now, though.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yes, you are.
But you're 100% right, because it kind of begs the question of as a will this piece of equipment help me get work, which is a completely fair question to be asking.
It is.
But you make a great point. Yeah.
And I will say also is that a Steadicam does not make an operator.
Exactly.
And it's a great tool. I love the tool. When I operate, especially doing Steadicam and handheld, but Steadicam really, there's like a flow state you get that people talk about in sports and things like that you're just sort of completely immersed in the moment. There's nothing else going on. The cares of the world just sort of melt away and you do the take. And that's where I do my best work. And that's something that I find happens sometimes on studio mode, but not that often. That's more of me like critiquing and tweaking constantly, which is more of like I don't know the proper brain terms, but sort of like a more front of mind thing, as opposed to the animal brain operating.
Sure. You're more conscious of that work versus.
I think my biggest thing for young operators is read books on directing, and editing. Approach operating as if you're a director and an editor. And I don't mean that by like bowling over people by being super aggressive, but understanding when the director is talking about something is the why of what they're doing, and where's the character coming from, and what is this scene trying? What's Christian in here always use the term the spine of the scene. What is the point of this scene? What is the scene doing for the story? Not only for the story of this episode or this sequence of the movie, but also what does this do for the character on the course of their season-long journey or their movie-long journey? And take those ideas and okay, so if this is the spine of the scene, what character's point of view is this from? What style should this be? And this is sort of watering it down a little bit, but what feels right for this scene? And being able to look at that and from a director's point of view, and not just like, okay, what's the coolest way to cover this scene, but what is the way that makes the most sense story-wise? And sometimes that means that we're going to cover this in a way that's kind of boring, and that's okay, because it serves the story.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then from the editing point of view, what does this cut in from? What does this cut to? What transitions do we want? If we think we're going to end that last scene on a big wide shot, do we want to echo that? Do we want to come in on an insert? Do we want to do the thing? Is this something that we want for it to really sit as the edit? And do we want to sort of mirror that style? Or is this a very frenetic sequence and we want to sort of mirror that style with the editing and the things? Do we need more inserts because this is sort of a very flip heavy thing or something? All these things that sort of it's the actual operating the camera is what we do, but it's such a small part of what we do.
There's so much more to it, yeah.
And in order to bring value to production, I think doing all those other things are the important part. And being a resource to then take what you're interpreting the director and DP are wanting and say, okay, now that we have this information, we've had this conversation, what the spine of the scene is and what the character's point of view is, all this sort of stuff. Okay, what are the right tools to do that? What's a way we can do that efficiently and also well? And that's a thing that I think if you watch a lot of TV, good TV does this really, really well. Where you're like, if you watch a scene and then draw an overhead of the scene, for younger operators especially, if you draw an overhead of the room, put the characters where they walk around, and then map the shots out and say, okay, if I did that thing, what shots could I match together? And where's the edit live in here? And you're like, oh, that scene actually only has 3 setups in it. But it looks like there's 8 shots because how they block that character now switches places with that character and all this sort of stuff. And it feels like a complex scene, but it's not that fast. That's not that hard to shoot. So especially on smaller stuff, if you can come in and you can be the person that can come in and say, okay, this is the spine of the scene. This is what you want to do. But what if this character sits here and then this character comes up behind them, and then as they turn, then that character becomes this and turns to a close-up and all that sort of stuff, that we can sort of experience this from this character's point of view, but we can only do it in 3 setups. Because this is a short film, we don't have time to do any more than that.
Yeah, you become much more of an asset. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
And so, and I also think that approaching things from a point of efficiency is useful, but approaching them from a point of good storytelling is way more useful.
Spoken like a true operator.
But both is great.
That's great. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think I think what's difficult to understand about that, if you are beginning, is that it's the payoff is down the road. The payoff is a few layers in, as opposed to you're on the set and you made a really cool looking shot and your dolly grip's excited about it, you're excited about it, key grip comes over, it's like, dude, that was really awesome, and it's like a payoff. It's like, oh, this is cool, this is great, and then the episode's terrible, or like it does not help tell the spine of your scene. You're like, oh, well, hold on, what am I actually getting paid to do here? Like what like how am I being an asset? It's to tell that story. And so the payoff may seem like it isn't right there in front of you. When you're shooting something that might just be maybe classical, just like frames that you're letting the actors play in, but it's more effective at telling that story. So I think it's something to keep in your head for those of you who are getting started. I think what you were saying with the overheads is a great practice to understand, like, how much goes into this if you've not been on the set that often. I think that's a great practice to get into, and just to understand how long this could have taken them. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and the overheads are something I still do on set. Take the back of the sides, draw out an overhead, arc with the characters are going to be. Even if nothing else for them, when the second team comes in, I can go, yeah, that's where they stood. They stood right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and making notes in the sides to say like, okay, they're going to sit on this line, they're going to do this, you know, but then being able to have the overhead with the AD and the DP and, you know, and say, okay, these are the 6 setups that make sense to do 1 and 2 together and 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6 that'd be their own thing. We can do it this order, and then great, and break. And we all on the same page, you know, and then I can go start working with camera and DP can start, you know, so stuff like that. I think overheads are such a wonderful thing. And I know everyone loves their iPads and all this sort of stuff, but for me, paper sides, pen, it's so much easier for me. I don't know. That's just me. But
I think I side with you there. Plenty of people have plenty of different systems that work well for them. But I think in the end, find out what works for you. Well, you know, so I'm kind of curious to a somewhat news like segment of a kind of like a best worst, just to maybe get some experiences from you in terms of like what it is you value out of productions. I know we've talked a lot about story, and maybe it's the same answer, but can you speak to, you don't have to talk about the project specifically, but can you speak to like a project in your mind that kind of sits above the rest, and then another project that's you would never do again, and kind of in what characteristics of those shows like attributed to that? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can I name the show, especially the good show?
100%.
Okay, I've worked on a lot of great shows, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And the two that sort of stick out are the two you talked about, which is Underground Railroad in Atlanta, and they sort of stick out. I know, and they sort of stick out for the obvious reasons. But I think the one I want to talk about in terms of the best is Snatchers, which is a movie that no one's talked about, or not very many people have seen. It's not that popular, but my God, it was a good time. And it was hard. We were doing like scouting on every weekend. It was like a $600,000 feature. I only did the first half. They ended up shooting it sort of. It was a very odd thing. They shot like it as a mini series first for the first half, and then they shot the second half of the mini series, and they cut it all together as a feature because there was like some rights that happened back and forth and things. So I did the first half, but it was basically 5 weeks in Salt Lake City. My best friend was the DP, who convinced me to come out on it, and it was. I didn't drink coffee beforehand, and by the end, I was at 2 cups a day, like over the course of 5 weeks. It was the hardest show I think I've ever done, just about. But the thing is that the director, Stephen and Benji, who, shout out Stephen and Benji, they're amazing. They're so funny and so good. And they instantly recognized that Nate and I both knew what we were doing and wanted to do the thing good, and that we were invested. And they were like, yes, you want to be invested, let's invest you. And so there was an instantaneous, like, you're on our side, we're a big team, and we're going to make this thing good.
That's awesome.
And we did. And it's very Edgar Wright feeling. It's very, whip pans and snap zooms, and there's one section that, spoiler alert, but it's in the first third, so it's fine. A pregnant teenager gives birth to an alien baby, and the alien baby, as she's giving birth, blows the head of a doctor off. As it shoots out of her, right? And so then it cuts back to the nurse and to the two teenage girls, and it cuts back, and we do a snap zoom tango Dutch, where like I have the speed handle on the tango, and I have like a hand on the thing, and I'm sort of doing it like a tilt up snap zoom, pop in thing as they're squirting blood in the actors' faces, and it's just this thing of this ridiculous thing. And I remember we did sort of the pilot, this little teaser thing for it, and it was supposed to be 4 days. It ended up being 5 because the 4th day we shot the normal day, and then we had inserts because there's this whole sequence. There's like a 30-second sequence that I think has like 50 shots in it. Because it's very like Edgar Wright, boom, da-doom, 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 sort of thing. And so we spent another 12 hours, and we did a 24-hour day, which I do not recommend. And it was so maybe this is a bit of like type 2 fun, where it's like fun in retrospect. At the time, it was very stressful. Right. But the thing that show did was it gave me the opportunity pretty early on and pretty young to be super, super creatively collaborative and to experience a show that I was so invested in creatively and able to make suggestions and make the thing good. And I see my fingerprints all over it. And it's a very satisfying thing to be like, I made that show better by being there. And we together and we made a good show together. That's not to say that I'm not valued on Atlanta or not valued on Underground Railroad, but those have been talked about a lot, and I'm more than happy to talk about them. But Snatchers itself, and it's a very fun movie. You should go watch. You should watch it. But it was sort of the first real involvement in that way where I was like, oh, this is what I can do as an operator. This is sort of this is what I want to do. I want to make movies like this. Not necessarily like the hours, but I want to make movies like this level of involvement and care.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
To feel like you are there for a reason. Like you have value is everything. Yeah. But then there's the other side of it all. Does anything ring a bell of you would never do again? And I'm assuming it was all reasons opposite of this one.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely worked on some rough shows too. I'll put the rough into two different categories, and I've done a lot of shows of both categories. One rough is just inhumane hours, inhumane conditions. Not respecting people as humans, and I have a big problem with that, especially. And I think it's a big thing for operators that we're in a position where we can speak up for people that a lot of people can't, that a lot of people aren't. And so if you see PAs, scripts, whoever being treated poorly, like say something. It's not acceptable. Everyone's human. Everyone's sort of treated as that. So there's that, and that's a pretty well documented. The film industry isn't great about that. We're slowly trying to change, but very slowly. The second one is sort of the opposite mentality, where it's like you as an operator are here as a human remote head. Do what I tell you and do it now. And I can do that. I have done it in the past. I am not bad at it. I am a technically relatively good operator. I can put the camera where you want to put it, and I can pan and tilt it the way you want me to pan and tilt it, and I can do it. It's just not super rewarding for me. And I know people that really thrive on that and are very, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. For me, if I can't have my brain engaged, it's really hard for me to be there for 12 hours a day. It's really difficult for me to be there. So there's a couple projects that I've done that have sort of that have had that experience, and I made it through, and I think I did a good job and left relationships good and all this sort of stuff like that. And nothing recently, thankfully. I've been sort of very intentional with how I interview and how I take projects to attempt to mitigate that, knowing that it's not necessarily that that's like the wrong way to utilize an operator or anything like that. It's just that it's not a good fit. It's like if the DP wants that operator, there are operators who do that and really thrive on, okay, give me the exact frame and I'll make it perfect. And I know I can do that, but I know that's not the thing I want to do career-wise. So I think it's something that there's nothing wrong with it, but for me, worst job, I'm doing air quotes for those that are listening at home, worst job is one that I don't get any fulfillment out of, because this industry, we work too hard, too many hours away from our loved ones too much to not get some fulfillment out of it.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's there's been, I've always said with those kind of jobs that I feel like it's easier when you go into the project, committed to the project, knowing what it's going to be. Like we've all been on a show where it's like it's pitched one way and it ends up actually being something different, and that's something that's never fun. But then the jobs that you're more of a technical operator to do the same thing over and over again, I find that's fine for me most of the time if I want to work. So as long as it like if you have a yeller, some kind of yeller DP or something in those positions, it becomes completely different. But if you're working with people that are nice and easy to work with, I think,
and that also becomes a huge part of it. Yeah,
huge,
huge part of it. Who you're working with and who you're working for makes such a difference.
100%. Yeah. Well, hey, I want to talk about the Underground Railroad a little bit.
Yeah.
I've not seen it, but I have seen we were going to have clips on this, and then Jeff Bezos took those away from us. He would not let us screen capture those. But some of that work, again, just the clips I'm seeing, astonishing. I'm thinking of I don't know the scene really well. I think the young boy was supposed to recite the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, Declaration of Independence. Yeah.
I mean, so smooth, and I can't imagine the terrain was terrible. Tell us a little bit more about, maybe not in that job specifically, but maybe just
sure. I'm more than happy to do either one. First of all, I wasn't even supposed to do that show necessarily. I was already booked on something else, and then the operator had to leave, and I was very grateful that the A camera focus puller recommended me. Alan Newcomb, and
Oh,
I
nice.
talked to James, and he offered me the job, and I was like, yeah, I'll go work for James and Barry, of course. Coming in, and people warned me about how nice they were. People warned me James and Barry are really
Warned you how
nice.
nice they were.
How nice they were,
How,
and even with those warnings, I was not prepared for how
yeah.
nice they were. I had such imposter syndrome because in my mind I'm going through therapy and working on all of this, but in my mind, people that are that nice to me are doing so because they don't like me.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to be nice.
You gotta watch
They're just trying to be nice because they just don't want you to know that they're saying awful things behind you. And but they are genuinely, James and Barry are genuinely the nicest people I've ever met. I mean, they're
Wow,
just
that's awesome.
genuinely lovely human beings. And I remember, so obviously I'm coming to the show a month and a half late. I still did 6 months of the show. I did most of the run, but come to the show a month and a half late, and so it's also hard to jump into a show like that. Very specific camera language, very specific wants from Barry and James. And I remember very early on, must have been first week, setting up to do this shot, and the whole shot didn't make it in the episode. It's sort of edited in between two things, but it basically it ended up like rushing in on Cora, landing in a close up, and then pulling back with her, and then doing a 360 as she walks across this whole plantation, panning off at one point, panning back onto her, and ending behind her. So doing a 360 at night over the course of like a football field, or 3/4 of a football field, 75 yards. And it's a hard shot. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. And the bigger thing is timing this cross and then not seeing the lights in the condors and all this sort of stuff. And I remember just being like, okay, let's do it. This is like the second time I put the rig on, for James and Barry.
Yeah.
And I remember Barry telling me, there's no wrong decisions. And that was a very cool phrase to hear from a director, basically being like, make choices. There's no wrong decisions. And that sort of echoed through the entire show as we got more and more into it.
Huge.
And a huge thing. And there was another distinctive time that it was up to Barry, and I was like, we could do this, we could do that. James is off doing something else, and I was like, we could do this, we could do that. What should you prefer? And Barry was like, you're a better operator than me. Whichever one you think, and then we'll tweak from there. And he was because it was like a thing of like, he recognized that he's 100,000% he's a better director than I am, but he recognized that like I've done a lot more operating than he has. And he recognized that and appreciated that I was bringing that honesty and candor and like involvement and engagement in the project. So working with Barry and James was amazing. James is also an incredible DP, an incredible operator. One of those people that I think absolutely serves the story and serves the story above all else, and then somehow also makes things that are incredibly gorgeous, which is a very hard thing to do. It's not that it's easy to make gorgeous things when you have full control, but it's easier to make pretty things when you have full control. It's a different thing when you get on set and we're like, okay, it's gonna all be front lit. Cool. And then you see the footage and you're like, God damn, this is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Of course you did front lit because this works so well and all this sort of stuff. And so there were not a lot of rules on Underground Railroad in terms of operating. We were sort of, pan off and get that thing, do this thing, and as we progressed further and further, and the first clip you showed me we're talking about is with the Declaration of Independence. It was originally not supposed to be a oneer. We rehearsed the scene before lunch, and during lunch I came back from lunch and was chatting with Barry, and Barry was like, what if we did this in one? And I was like, I mean, sure, we talk about it and do it.
I think it'll probably make my reel, sir.
And no, and Kevin Knight, who's the gaffer, who's also excellent, so good, and James came over and we were talking about it, and they were both like, well, we're not really set up to light for a oneer at night. 360 oneer, but we could, okay. And so it ended up being like, they're like, oh, well, let's just try and do as much as we can in one shot, and then we'll figure out what we need from there, which turned into it being a oneer.
Which turns into, hey, can you please just figure it out?
Yes. And so, yeah, and we ended up doing it. And if you look very closely, they probably painted it out, but I ended up swiping through a condor base at one point.
Okay.
And I think it's during I forget which part of the shot, but it's during a quick pan through.
It's
and
a dark
it might
scene.
It's a dark scene. It might still be there. It might have painted it out. I'm not sure. But, James and Kiva ended up doing light cues and, doing all stuff. And it ended up working really well.
It's beautiful.
It's
it really
beautiful.
is.
And it's emotional. And it builds as a scene, and I think and for the scene, and I'd love to get Barry on here and talk with him about this stuff too. And if anyone hasn't had an opportunity to listen to Barry Jenkins interviews, please do. He is such a well-spoken man and such a emotionally intelligent director that I love that man to death. But the scene builds tension in the fact that it's a oneer in a way that I'm not sure it would if you were cutting. So far, we haven't really had a oneer in the episode this far, and now as these plantation owners are coming to here and sort of interrupting this party, we all of a sudden have a bit of interruption of style too, in a way that we now sort of build in and get closer and closer and sort of envelop you into this sort of their power in the scene, in the world, in a way that's really, really, really tense and hard to watch.
Yes.
Underground Railroad is a very difficult show to watch.
Yes.
It's
Talk
a very
about roles hard to play, I can only imagine. Yeah.
And man, the actor who plays Randall, I think
was that the guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember I came in and we did a scene with him my first day there. Obviously, I've been doing stuff. Hadn't really met him. He just said hi, and we did a couple scenes with him. And I was like, God, I hate this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so bad. And then like, he's a super nice guy. He's a wonderful. Like at one point, he was like, "Hey, can I have a second to go call my kid before they go to sleep tonight?" Like, such a wonderful dude. But he plays that character so, and you're just like, oh, the visceral, emotion about that. So that was great, and that was a very early Steadicam in Underground, and there was quite a development, I think, between James and Barry and I about what we use Steadicam for and how we felt, and there was a lot of conversations throughout the series of what the different episodes felt like. There's 10 episodes. Some of them are the short interstitial ones, but we sort of go state by state. So we have Georgia, we have Tennessee, we have South Carolina, North Carolina, Indiana, summer, and Indiana, winter, and the style changes as Cora progresses through this journey. And so I think it was an interesting thing of James and I sort of making sure we try to stay within those different things and sort of try and direct our camera language in a path while still shooting a very ambitious TV show and while still shooting the way Barry likes to shoot. And the other clips that I pulled up are from Indiana Winter, which is the final full-length episode before the last episode. So it's episode 9. And I'm pretty sure episode 8 and episode 9, Barry was saying it's like 75% Steadicam. We did a lot of Steadicam. I ended up losing like 10 pounds over the course of that month and a half. Legitimately, like I could not eat enough because we were in the rig so much. But we sort of allowed Steadicam to start us in this Valentine plantation, one of the places that Cora ends up at. It's the first place she's seeing Black people free, like really genuinely free and enjoying their lives and building something out of their lives. And so we as the camera are free too. We don't have the constraints of Georgia or the rigidness of Tennessee or North Carolina in terms of our camera language. And we move a lot, and we do a lot of big oneers, a lot of big movements. There's a couple of shots. There's so many pieces that I could pull up to reference.
I'm sure.
But the work we did in those episodes is really cool. And as Barry started trusting me more, we started just sort of relegating things to be more in a really enjoyable way.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot of times where Barry nicknamed me the possum. Da possum, D-A possum.
Wait a second. I think I've seen that somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there was definitely times where like, all right, possum's putting the rig on. Let's like make sure we can't see anything ever, because they're like just go crazy. Like I want to wrap around them. I want to transition from person to person. I want to do all these things, and I want to give you the freedom to change and discover. And so a lot of Underground was discovering what the scene was as we were shooting it. And so a lot of the way we shot that, instead of doing the overhead and doing the thing, is we sort of worked out some sort of shot that took us through the most of the scene that we could, right? So some sort of piece of coverage or master shot that wasn't just a big wide master, but like whatever character we were trying to follow, whatever we're doing, sort of leading us through the scene as best we could, and then we'll pick up the other pieces of coverage we need afterwards.
Sure.
And that worked really well. It requires a lot of flexibility on production's part, because you end up seeing a lot, you end up having to light a lot, and you end up, especially we talk about a period piece that has tons and tons of extras and horses and gunfire and flame bars and all this sort of stuff, it becomes really, really hard. Um, our AD staff was incredible. Liz Tan,
They had to have been.
Liz Tan, she is one of the best ADs I've ever worked with in my entire life. Incredible AD, and all of her staff, from second ADs all the way down to the PAs, all did an amazing job to sort of, and the background too were great.
That's awesome.
But it was very cool having the freedom to do that, and also the trust of the director that I was on the island with him and helping him tell that story, and working together with both him and James and the actors to really to make the show as intimate and personable as it is.
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's I can't think of anything more you'd want as a camera operator. I mean, not only are you given immense freedom and you have the assets around you in your lighting and your production that can support that, but you also have that coming from a talented director who he directed all the episodes, right?
Yeah, wrote and directed all of them.
Who's going to be there the whole time. So not only is that going to continue, but y'all's rapport, your relationship, that's going to continue to grow. So I mean, I can't think of a better recipe for for success cinematography wise.
And definitely an experience that I don't know if I'll ever have again. I mean,
sure.
I'll work. Knock on wood, I'll work for Barry again. But
sure, yeah.
Just in terms of like that being the period piece of it all and sort of the scope of it all is just enormous.
Yeah.
Just very, 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 very cool.
Yeah. The show I'm prepping now. I start Monday. DP's a good friend of mine. We've worked together. We have a good relationship, and he said the words. He's like, "Look, I just want to have you be able to move wherever you want to go." And to me, that was like, I can't think of anything better you want to hear from your DP is like, yes, that
it's the trust,
thing. 100%.
And to the DPs out there that might be listening to this, if you find an operator that you trust, let them run with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it will make your life so much easier if you. And I get that it's hard because it's also giving up some control and it's giving up some creative intent. But have conversations with them, and if you can find an operator that you can trust to do stuff, it can make your life a lot easier on set, but also it can elevate the production a lot.
Yeah, and again, I think the first point of that is find one you can trust, and if that is the case, that to me would be the bridge between not being willing to give the control and being willing to is
absolutely
like, look, this is if you can find, and I mean, I totally understand. I'm sure people have had experiences with operators they did not trust, and that has scarred many DPs out there.
And I've worked with those DPs, and those scars are very clearly evident. Like, oh, we don't really like Steadicam, and it's a little wobbly. No. I'm like, okay, really yes, but like, it's the right tool here. Yeah.
That's so great. Oh man. Yeah. Well, I want to go watch the series again, but the clips I've seen of that, just beautiful work. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to see more of that. Real quick, just to finish this off, again, the gearhead side of this all. You're creating all this gear. I'm seeing you online creating, like, you're machining gear and stuff now. Is that new, or have you been doing that a while?
Yeah, no, it's actually it came. I've always tinkered. I've been 3D printing for years. My very first rig, I like wired up, and I couldn't afford a real rig or batteries, so I got like lead acid scooter batteries from Fry's Electronics and built a wooden box and wired them in. Like it's I've always tinkered for a long time, and I've been wanting to get into doing metal stuff for a while. And so during the pandemic, we all had a little 4-6 months off.
Yes.
So like, okay, I'm gonna buy a mill and a lathe, import ones, and just gonna mess around and try it out and see how I liked it. It turns out I really like it, and converted one to CNC, started making bits and bops for myself. Turns out other people have the same problems that I've had and want the same solutions that I've had.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been making stuff, and
it's awesome.
I took the name from Barry from Underground, Possum Solutions.
Yeah.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Possum Solutions.
Perfect.
A little plug there.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's fun. It's a thing that I'm still an operator. That's what I do. That's what I love doing. This is something that exercises a very different part of my brain, and it's such an enjoyable way to like zone out and think about other things and design stuff and spend some time in the garage and have a hobby and all that sort of stuff. So I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, it's
That's
fun.
awesome.
It's also like a really nice tool. I know my first assistant on Atlanta season 3 and season 4, when I came to prep and they were like, yeah, we're trying to do this. I was like, oh, I can fix that.
Yeah.
I have it up for that. Oh, you want it? Oh, yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
But you
And
had
we
the
ended up making
mind
a
for
bunch
it,
of,
and now you
yeah,
have the gear
the
for
equipment.
it. It's like,
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
And they say when you what is it when you have a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
So now that I have it, I'm like, oh, we can solve that. I can machine something. I can do that. But we end up making all these like custom solutions that end up being like, oh, this is really useful to have on set to be able to be like, okay, we can make if something needs to exist to attach these two things together, and we need some rig for something or something. I'm like, yeah, we can. If you give me a week, we can do it.
It's awesome.
We can do anything. So
yeah.
Definitely fun.
That's great. Again, Possum Solutions, right?
Yeah, Possum
Instagram
Solutions.
if people want to find you. Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Go check that out. Can you tell just people who may be curious, these gearheads of like your rig, like what are you flying nowadays, just generally?
Yeah. So I have a M1 Volt Tiffin, and generally like the Tiffin stuff. I grew up on the Pro with the XCS gimbal and love that gimbal to death. But the M1, the Volt is a big difference. The Volt is game changing. All this, I did stuff in underground that I would not have been able to do without the Volt, or not be able to do as cleanly while thinking about the story as opposed to having to think about Horizon.
Sure.
Big difference. I've had good experiences with it. I haven't had a break on me, anything like that. I have a Pro Arm still, the same thing. It's just bulletproof. I know some guys are starting to change over to other arms. I haven't tried those yet. I'd like to try like a Flowcine arm and an MP stabilizer. Yeah, I'd like to try them. And I know some guys in town that have them that I'm gonna try out. But Pro Arm's just bulletproof, and Walter Klassen vest, that kind of vest. And that works for me. The vest is a very personal thing. Obviously, some guys love the front mount, some guys love the back mount. And again, a lot more options now than there were when I started, with all the other companies out there making stuff, which is awesome. And then I have a slingshot. And Walter Klassen also makes a slingshot that I use for handheld. The little bracket that I built and designed almost all the handheld in the upcoming Atlanta season 3 and season 4 were done with the slingshot. Cool. And for a show like that, it's really handheld heavy. It's really useful to have something. I know there's like Charles Parpet.
The ZG, right?
Yeah, I've seen his name written a lot. I don't know if I've ever heard
I think Charles is correct. I can't recall the last name. I'm pretty sure.
Parpet or Parpet? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Charles, if you listen to this. I apologize for not knowing how to pronounce your name. I've admired your work for a long time. Scrubs is awesome. You're a great operator. Yeah. Awesome. But there's all sorts of the ZGs out and all the ergo rig and all these sort of things to assist. And it's hard because handheld's really hard to replicate to make it look good, make it feel real. So that's sort of the gear I do. Nice. I have a Wave as well that I use for some stuff. I tend to actually use it off of Steadicam more than on now, for like long sliders with boom moves to get rid of that sway you get from the end of the slider. You can throw it on there and it corrects for Horizon, or long dolly track that the dollies gets kicked a bunch or something. You don't have time to relay it. Throw it on there and it'll help at least take the Horizon out of it. Not a full stabilized head or something, but no, the gears has changed a lot, and the gear has given us a lot of more opportunities to do some stuff that we would have never been able to do before, or to be able to do stuff faster than we would have been able to do before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This flexibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome, Jarrett. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Blast.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll find a reason to do it again someday.
For sure. Maybe we'll actually find those clips and we can talk through some actual stuff. Absolute pleasure.
I'll call Bezos now and figure out how we can get past the black wall or whatever.
Perfect.
Awesome, man. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Jarrett Morgan, everybody.
Thank you so much.
All right, later.